brings me great pleasure to officially inaugurate the National Council on Privatization.
The mandate is one of commercialization, privatization, optimizing government investment.
BP has been a very good partner to the discos. You know, they have a seat on our board, and we've worked with them in a very consensual manner whereby most decisions are taken as a team. In a co-disco, we run a very transparent board. We follow proper governance. We do our accounts after when due, and all what needs to be done on the cooperative, we have done that. This is why I always say that today we are referenced as the best disco in Nigeria, and BP has helped us in achieving that.
Welcome to OTNA, your window to information on optimization.
Governments around the world are privatizing enterprises, and this cuts across state enterprises and public enterprises. Now, most of these enterprises, in an effort to improve efficiency and lessen financial burden, often end up becoming a burden to the government treasury itself, thereby reducing funds and the needed improvement that is required for the livelihood of the people of the country. With a few exceptions, the performance of these enterprises have actually been disappointing, and the results of previous partial efforts to reform them have been minimal. Today, many successes of strategic reforms carried out by the Bureau of Public Enterprises and how labor issues are professionally treated are not known by many Nigerians. That's why we're here today. Welcome. This is OTNA, Optimizing the Nation's Assets. Here, we look at the strategic work done by the Bureau of Public Enterprises, the BPE, to ensure that successful reforms are done. And at the end of the day, Nigerians are happy for it. Let's meet my guest today.
OTNA.
My guest today is himself a labor veteran. He was the pioneer head of Information and Public Relations Department of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC. He is a trained journalist, but dedicated to fighting for humanity. Let's meet Comrade Salisu Mohammed, our guest today on OTNA. Comrade Salisu, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having me.
Now, the first question that comes to mind is different people have different understanding of what labor is actually all about. Some people now join labor to get to political positions. Some people have so many reasons why they join labor. So my first question is, dissect for us, as a labor veteran, what or who is labor?
Well, thank you very much. It is really a much agitated, area that has suffered so many mal-definitions. But I think very straightforwardly, labor, refers to the summation of the energy that is total mental and manual power of a worker that is exerted in producing value. That simply is what labor is all about. It is about the capacity that is dedicated to creating wealth of nations.
Now that brings me to what we really want to look at. You were an advisor on labor with the Bureau of Public Enterprises. And in terms of looking at reforms and labor, give us a dissection of what reforms does from your experience.
Well, thank you very much. I think really the perception of labor is not really different from the normal average human, perception when it comes to change. It is the case all the time that any form of change that is, forthcoming is greeted with a lot of mistrust and a lot of, feeling that people will be shortchanged, fear of the unknown, because it is not easy to persuade people concerning the advantages that such changes and such reforms normally, intends to usher. So labor did not actually behaved differently. It greeted the reform, announced by government with that mindset. And for us, really, that we are located, to handle the labor issue in the reform process, this was a very strong, opposition that we had faced. And government was very, very, clever enough and very, very, generous enough to really see the necessity to engage the workforce in a very robust, serious dialogue, to really share with them what the reforms, were all about, to show to them that it was designed for them, and it is meant, to really adjust their life in such a positive manner that will enable them, to have mobility, in their places of work, that will allow the industry to grow, and also remove a lot of obstacles, and bottlenecks that have hindered the performance of these enterprises.
Yeah, and that's what we're here about, to look at the success story, because for some other organizations, it's very difficult to work with labor. In fact, some people will try this and try that at the end of the day. But that brings me to the success of the BPE in dealing with labor. You've been part of this. So what are the strategies that the Bureau of Public Enterprises puts in place when they are going into a reform or a transaction to ensure that labor is taken care of, and to ensure that at the end of the day, there are no troubles here and there?
I actually want to give a lot of kudos, to our, erstwhile, Director General, of the BPE, Malam Nasiru Erufai. Immediately, he assumed a mantle of leadership in that organization. He felt the need to really create a very enabling, platform that will engage stakeholders, not only workers, but all stakeholders, including buyers, bidders, communities, workers, in a very, very robust, and open, dialogue. And this really took a long time, but he said that was the only way to do it. And we actually got ourselves, into work. And all these, ramified groups were engaged by specialists, people that have, a lot of knowledge on communities, were engaged, to really work, in those areas of community work. Some of us that are specialists, in labor and trade union issues were actually, brought in, and we also focus, on the workers' component, of the privatization exercise, and others that are with the buyers and the sellers, were equally, doing their own, including legal, luminaries, were all, brought in, and therefore it was a very, very, well-handled, situation. And for us that were really mandated to work with workers, we went straight, to the areas that we felt will address, their own concern. And therefore, what we did is to actually do a kind of, engagement that enable us, to do a compendium of their concerns, develop them, in all aspects, the social, the economic, the political, all of them, into a different, kind of strategy that gave us catalog, of this concern. And we came back, to the office
and the results,
and began to develop a framework, of providing, solutions that will not be done, without their input. So we aggregated those inputs, and we now came and developed what we now said the do's and don'ts of, privatizing, the industries, which were shared with the management of enterprises that were handling it as it was then under government. The do's and don'ts, we spelled out what will happen, and for a period of 5 years, what they will do and what they will not do, so that they don't run the factories, down, the enterprises down, because of the impending change that was coming. For the workers, the same. And therefore, by the time all those things were understood by us, we also went further to develop labor policy framework. The labor policy framework also, came out with a very, very, wide, ranging, options for the workers. What will happen to them when this change comes? Where the options are, how they can make their own choices, how downsizing will be obviated, how it will become inevitable. When it happens, this will be, the package that will be there for you. And you are all free to decide on which option you want to take.
So at the end of the day, they would support the reforms themselves.
That was really what
this is beautiful, because this is what makes it very lovely to now look at the results. When you cook properly, the food will come out eventually well.
Okay.
We'll take this short break to show you some of those success stories. After the strategic reforms are well planned, and our guest today, Comrade Salisu Mohammed himself, having worked with the BPE as one of those consultants that ensured that labor issues are solved. The result is what you're about to see.
OTNA, optimizing the nation's assets.
Welcome back. This is OTNA, optimizing the nation's assets. My guest today, Comrade Salisu Mohammed, and he's told us a lot about labor, who and what really labor is all about. And he's also told us how strategically, under the leadership of the SY Director General, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, former governor of Kaduna State, they started handling labor professionally. And the result is what we'll get to know as we return. So once again, Comrade Salisu Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, let's come to direct stories of things that we can relate with, because we do know that we've had enterprises, both state-owned and public-owned, that started well. Tell us direct success stories on labor and how it was handled and resolved by the Bureau of Public Enterprises.
Well, let me thank you very much, for actually bringing this question. I feel most delighted, to respond to it. In particular, I want to start with the one that you actually pinpointed, especially the case of hotels management. This is an area that really pains me based on my direct experience with the case of Festac, hotel in Lagos. Many of you remember that hotel was the most prestigious, by the time it was established. It was not intended or designed as a hotel. It was initially meant for Festac 77. But by the time, the festival, was to be hosted, the hotel was not ready. So government, built Festac Village, and that was what was used to accommodate our guests from international communities. But at the end of the Festac Festival, government, had the will and the determination to complete that place. And by that time, the 1999, transition had already taken place. And therefore, in his own wisdom, designed the hotel to accommodate the incoming politicians, members of the House of Rep, the senators, were to be accommodated there. But side by side with that time, government had finished building 1004 in Victoria Island. So these politicians, who most of the time are selfish, preferred to stay in 1004 and abandon government with Festac. So government had a dilemma. What to do with Festac? Government decided to turn it into a hotel. And by that time, I want to tell you that it was the most beautiful edifice, in the whole of the country. Older hotels, like
Even globally.
Maryland Hotel, believe me, by global standard, it became more prestigious than Federal Palace in Ikoyi. And therefore, it started from day one as a 5-star hotel. Every room there was en suite, the whole of it. And it started operating very, very successfully. But it had the misfortune of attracting the interest of these, new novel-rich politicians that were living 1004 to go there, as the powers that be, and eating, swimming, having the facilities for free. Like you expect, like any other thing in this world that was mismanaged, it was run down.
What was the result on that on the workers themselves?
It was very pathetic because the cumulative end result of this abuse, turned the hotel from a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star, until there was no room to let. And by the time the workers had stayed there for 36 months without salary, if you have seen the horror that we had witnessed, you will be shedding tears. Those workers were chased away by their landlords from their respective houses because they couldn't pay their rent with their children. They had no alternative than to move en masse into that, hotel environment. And they took over the hotel. By that time, it had become a completely desolate, environment. Nothing was working, completely abandoned. That was the situation in which we met, that hotel. And believe you me, by the time, we were able to persuade the workers, to appreciate the need to really sell the hotel, they happened to be the most, supportive of the reform agenda. And they were the ones that really started embracing, the reform because they saw it as the only opportunity they have, to have succor from the very deplorable situation in which, they found themselves.
What really did the BPE do differently in this horrific situation?
Well, what we did differently, in my own opinion, is to actually show to them that government, was willing, to really come to their aid, through the medium of this reform. And they saw it as the only way by which, not only that they could be, compensated, but also the possibility for the industry, to get revitalized. And it's a bubbling place today.
Comrade, I want you to paint a picture of that transformation because you said you went back there.
Yes, I went.
And so I want you to
On
paint
my
a
own,
picture.
actually.
Tell us the name of the enterprise and paint a picture of the transformation you saw.
Yes, the USC bought, what I should say, condominium, because it was not an ongoing hotel. And they intended it, for their own business, and they transformed the area. Not only that, they actually, renovated, using enormous, resources to renovate, the place to a very global standard. But they also invested heavily, in the channels that opened the area to customers. That is bringing services, through the channels to Victoria Island. That is the shortest route, which is making that area now very, very, very attractive. Hitherto, it was a source of insecurity with hoodlums, menacing people. But now it is a delight, for the eye to see. And not only that, the workers had been paid all their entitlement. And some of them were actually, retrained by the new owner.
And reabsorbed.
And they are absorbed into the business. So sincerely speaking, this is one success story that I feel very proud to really associate myself with. And there are so many, that I can mention as we go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe, Comrade, just give us a list in the short time we have left of some of the other success stories, the places and what happened. Just a brief list. We've got the full detail of this, but a list in the short time we have of some of the other ones that you know.
Well, maybe just to expand, you can take an enterprise like the Nigeria Port Authority, which equally, was failing, as an enterprise. Many ships, were coming, the turn around, was becoming a problem. Government was paying heavy demurrage, because of inefficiency, and a lot of liabilities, were accumulated, not only for labor, but in terms of revenue that come to states. The bottom line, was very, very troublesome, and worrisome for government. But, with the reform that has seen, these obstacles, removed, with new private operators, coming to invest, in the sector post-privatization, our ports now have been really, really reformed. And you can see what is been the situation, especially in the Lagos area now, which is giving the economy a lot of confidence.
I can even confess, because I've been there.
So you've been there.
I've seen the transformation.
You've been there, so I'm very happy. I'm not going even to look at the banks, which is really a story that every Nigerian, can see that, the transformation is so enormous. And our banks are now not only operating here, they are opening branches in other, African countries and Europe. They are doing very, very successfully. And when you look at, other, areas, of the economy, you cannot really but salute, the reform that has taken place there. Take Nigeria Airways. Take Nigeria Airways. Really, when it was there, we were having 22 planes in the name of Nigeria Airways. And we started, with those, and until we had zero. So government, really had to reform, the aviation sector. We have lost Nigeria Airways, but we have now opened that sector for private operators. And today, customers have choice, and quality of service have remarkably improved. And now we are not only operating here, our local are also grown into global players. This is what happens when you have success stories in every sector that is being reformed.
Thank you so much, comrade. I wish we had much more time for you to tell us. But before we go, what's your advice? You have been an advisor to the Bureau of Public Enterprises on labor. Now, with the current government, there are a lot of labor issues. What's your advice as one who's been there, who's seen it happen, who's seen nothing become something?
Sincerely speaking, with the benefit of hindsight, I should say that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is immensely lucky to come into power at a time when the country had garnered a lot of experience in handling labor issues. And the case of BPE is a classical example. And all it will take him is to really examine the way it is done and begin to really adjust adaptation that will give him, the latitude to really multiply that success story we elaborate. And the secret of it is engagement. Once, you do engagement of stakeholders in any reform exercise that you do, you are likely to allay all fears. You are likely to get people comforted to appreciate the direction you are going and to be with you in following that direction. And once you allow that window of their own feelings to be aggregated into what you are doing, by the time they are, brought, to the table, it will not be difficult to shape, a solution that will have the buy-in of everybody. Therefore, government should not really neglect any social group that is going to be impacted by change. They should cultivate such groups and ensure that their feelings, their concerns are actually accommodated in the reform.
Finally, the current Director General of the Bureau of Public Enterprises, who just assumed office not too long ago, has also shown determination to want to see success in the work done. And I want to ask you, comrade, with the challenges on ground, what do you see in the future, as you would also maybe want to give some piece of advice to staff and management of the Bureau of Public Enterprises?
Well, really, BP has come a very long way. It has actually done this job, with mostly success. And the country should feel very proud of that institution. I remember when I was there, and I'm very sure the quality of service in that place, continues to actually rise, higher and higher. Nigerians were coming to see us in the office, and some of them say anytime they visit our office, they feel that they travel abroad. This is to show you what, standard, was there, which, made us, to do our work, with a lot of, dedication and unstinting loyalty. Very many, experts, were brought in, both locally, and internationally, to really provide, quality services of world standard. I am not expecting anything less. And the quality of leadership that is put in place now, I want to tell you that that institution will continue to go higher and higher. I am in a position to only fervently pray for the success of the current leadership and the team that will work with him to realize this prayer and this noble objective.
Let me thank you very much, Comrade Salisu Mohammed, a veteran journalist, a labor expert, and no doubt one who is passionate about humanity in Nigeria. Thank you for your time with us on OTNA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you. And that's it on OTNA today. What a revealing session it's been with Comrade Salisu Mohammed, telling us so much about the success story, especially as it concerns labor. It is sure that the Bureau of Public Enterprises can only become better, better, and better. As Nigerians, let's give the necessary support to see that we optimize the nation's assets. On behalf of the team, my name is Tokpe Ojeme. Thanks for your time with us. Join us again next week for another revealing session as we'll be bringing you some great success stories coming from Niger State here in Nigeria. I would leave that until we bring it your way next week. You want to know more? Stay with us at this time on Channels TV. Bye for now.
OTNA, optimization on the go.